Hey there, welcome back. Today we're talking about everything staining wood. Staining wood is one of the most popular ways of finishing a project, and that's because wood stain really enhances the wood grain and it really showcases the beauty of the wood. However, if you're just starting out, it can feel a little challenging because there's just so many decisions you need to make, like are you going to use oil-based stain or water-based stain? Do you really need pre-stain conditioner? Because some people don't use it and some people do. Do you need to seal wood? How do you seal wood? How do you get rid of the blotchiness that you see when you stain? And what about all of those little scratches, etc., that you end up seeing? Well, today I'm going to teach you exactly how to get the best finish on your stained projects. But before we get started, if you are new here, hi, I am Annika and I am here to demystify DIY and give you practical tutorials so you can really understand the fundamentals and make the most amazing projects. Now let's get started. Now, three of the most popular types of stain are the oil-based stain, the water-based stains, and the gel-based stains. And the oil-based stain is one of the most popular types of stains. It penetrates really deep into the wood fibers, it gives you a nice rich color, and it is very durable. But of course, it does take a while to dry, and it can be flammable, so you have to be careful with the rags that you're using to apply the stain. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about stain application. Now, water-based stains are more expensive than oil-based stains. They don't really penetrate the wood as deeply, so you don't get very rich colors, but they do dry super quick. And they are environmentally friendly. There's like soap and water cleanup. They have no fumes, so it's much better and easier to work with. The third popular type of stain is a gel stain, and these are actually some of the most expensive stains out there. Basically, like the name suggests, it's like a gel and it sits on your wood and waits until it like absorbs in, so you get this nice rich color, and it's pretty durable, but it takes forever to dry. And one of the great things about this is that you can actually stain over another stain without having to sand it off. So if you are in a hurry and you need to finish up a project real quick, you can go with a water-based stain. However, if you have the time to wait for it to dry, I highly recommend using an oil-based stain. Now, let's talk about exactly how to get that perfect stain finish. So for this video, I'm going to be using 2x4s and pine to show you exactly how to get an even stain. And that's because these species are probably the most challenging when it comes to getting even stain without the blotchiness. And that's essentially because the wood fibers in these species are not very tight, and there's a lot of variation in the spacing, so the amount of stain that is absorbed in different areas is different, giving you all of that blotchiness and variations. If you go on to more hardwoods like maple and walnut, well, you should not be staining walnut. But if you go on to other hardwoods, they take on stain more evenly, and some of them are harder to stain too, like maple, because the fibers are so tight, it's really hard for stain to penetrate. Now, step one, like any project, is to prepare the board, and that starts with sanding. Sanding plays an extremely important role in projects that you want to stain. With staining, you're actually enhancing the grain. So if you have light scratches and dents, they get enhanced as well. So the key is to sand your boards really well in the right technique. And I have a full video that talks about sanding wood that also goes into details on exactly how to prepare your boards for staining, and I will add a link to that in the description below. But here's a summary. You want to start with a 60 or an 80 grit, depending on how rough your boards are to start with. And then you want to sand in steps all the way to 220 grit. And you do not want to skip more than 60 grits at a time. And this is very, very important because if you skip more than that, you're going to have scratches remaining that'll be really hard to get rid of. Plus, while you are using your sander, you do not want to do things like apply pressure on it and move it too fast. And once again, definitely watch the sanding video before you start sanding your boards, and the link for that is in the description. I am going to split this board up into sections so you can see the effect of various parameters like sanding, not sanding the board versus the pre-stain conditioner. Okay, so I have sanded this. We have a no sanded area. We have an area over here which basically I sanded it with 80 grit, and then I skipped directly to 220 grit because I wanted to show you what that does. And then we have this entire area that has been sanded, nicely stepping up the grits all the way to 220 grit. Now with the boards sanded, we are going to clean up all of the sanding dust. You can start with a regular paper towel to wipe it down, but then you want to use a tack cloth to wipe off all the dust. And what the tack cloth is, it's basically a sticky cloth, so all of the dust sticks to it and it just lifts right off. Before we stain this, we are going to use a pre-stain conditioner. Now what a pre-stain conditioner is almost like a primer that you use with paint. What the pre-stain conditioner does is it helps prevent the blotchiness that you get. The blotchiness happens because the grain absorbs stain unevenly, and there's like areas where it'll absorb more and areas where it'll absorb less, and that kind of leads to all of the blotchiness. Now what the pre-stain conditioner does is it goes into the grains and it temporarily seals the grain, so it basically evens out the rate of absorption across the board, so you get a nice even stain color. Now there are two different types of pre-stain conditioners. There's the water-based and there is the oil-based, and as always, oil and water do not mix. So you want to use an oil-based pre-stain conditioner when you're using oil-based stains, and water-based pre-stain conditioners when you're using water-based stains. Now the first thing we're going to do is we are going to open up this pre-stain conditioner and we are going to stir it. So this is what we are going to be doing. I'm going to apply pre-stain conditioner on all of these. Remember, this is the part that we did not sand. This is the part where we skipped grits and sanded, and this is the part that was sanded really well. So we're going to apply pre-stain conditioner on all of this and not apply any conditioner here, so you can see what the difference is when I apply the stain. To apply pre-stain conditioner, I just use a chip brush to apply in the direction of the wood grain. Now you want to read the directions on your can for the exact times, but for this one I needed to wait about 5 minutes for it to penetrate and then wipe off all of the excess in the direction of the wood grain. Now we need to let it sit for about 30 minutes before applying the stain. Now you have to remember that anything oil-based stinks, has a lot of fumes and VOCs, so you really want to make sure that you apply them in a well-ventilated area. I am here in the garage. I have the front garage open, I have a back door open, so there's like cross ventilation, or you could do it outdoors. Now in the meantime, I have this other board that I sanded and prepared. Now on this board, I'm going to be comparing water-based and oil-based stains with and without conditioner. So on this side of the board, I'm applying oil-based pre-stain conditioner, and then here I'm going to apply water-based pre-stain conditioner. Application process is exactly the same. You apply it with a foam or a chip brush and you wipe it off in the direction of the grain. Now with the oil-based version, you will see that there isn't really a change in the texture of the board. It's still pretty smooth. However, with the water-based pre-stain conditioner, you'll see a light roughening up of that area. So if you see that, all you want to do is take a 220 grit sandpaper and lightly sand away any roughness that you see, and then wipe it down really well with the tack cloth before you go ahead and stain. So I am going to be using this dark walnut stain, and as always, you want to make sure you stir the stain really well before you apply it. Now to apply the stain, you can use a rag. This is just cut off from a t-shirt, or you can use a foam brush or even a chip brush. I like using a lint-free cloth or a foam brush. Foam brushes are great if you are staining something with tight spaces and crevices so you can easily get in there. To apply the stain, I'm just going to dip the rag in the stain and apply the stain in a circular motion across the board. The circular motion makes sure that you get the stain into the grain of the wood really well. And then you let it penetrate for a couple of minutes and then come back and wipe it off in the direction of the wood grain. If you are working on a large area like a tabletop or the shelf that I'm building here, you want to work in sections, blending the areas together as you wipe off the excess stain in the direction of the grain. Remember, apply in a circular motion and wipe off in the direction of the grain. You want to make sure that the stain doesn't sit for too long, as it will become tacky and hard to blend or wipe off. If you do need a darker stain, instead of letting it sit too long, it is best to come back and apply a second coat. You do want to pay special attention to the edges, as the drips can sometimes go unnoticed, and once they dry up, they can be really hard to remove. The edge grain always absorbs stains differently, and it's usually much darker, so be sure to take that into account in your projects. Then we're going to go on to our next board, and I'm going to apply the oil-based stain in dark walnut and the water-based stain in dark walnut as well. The application method is exactly the same. Apply in circular motions and wipe it off in the direction of the grain. So let's take a close-up look at this. So this corner right here is not sanded at all. So you can see how bad the staining is, the blotchiness, the scratches, and everything. And this right here is where I skipped grits. And if you look close, you can see not only the blotchiness, but you can see swirl marks. And that's what happens if you skip grit. Then we're going to go to this end over here, which was sanded nicely. So there aren't as many swirl marks, but this got the conditioner and this did not get the conditioner. So if you look close, you see a whole bunch of blotchiness. Even though you don't see a lot of swirl marks, you still see how uneven the stain absorption is. Whereas in this area right here, you get pretty good stain absorption. Yes, it is lighter than the rest of the areas, and that's okay. And we expect that because the pre-stain conditioner does go in and seal the wood grain, so the wood grain does not absorb a lot of stain. Now, if you do want it darker, you can always go in with a second coat of stain. Now, here is our comparison of the water-based stain. Now, this end right here is the oil-based stain. You can see how it's rich. It had the conditioner and the sanding, and it's really nice and rich, and there is absolutely no blotchiness. On the other hand, on this end, we had no conditioner and conditioner. And if you look close, you can see all of the blotchiness in the grain, whereas right here, you don't see that. But you can see the difference in how rich this color is versus this color right here. Now, one of the important things to remember is when you're working with oil-based stains, the oil-based stains are flammable, and these rags can catch fire spontaneously. So you can't just take them and throw them in a trash can. The best thing is to just lay them flat, let them dry out, and then throw them away. Top coat time. You definitely want to apply a top coat to your board, because the top coat is going to protect your wood from dents and damage and water rings, or just make it easier to dust. The amount of time that you need to wait between applying the stain and applying the top coat really depends on the type of stain you're using and the brand that you're using. So definitely check the can of the stain to see exactly how long you need to wait. In terms of the top coat, there are a few options. There is oil-based top coat and water-based water-based top coat. And unlike with the wood conditioner and the stain, you can use water-based top coat on oil-based stains. If you are using your project outdoors, you definitely want to use spar urethane because that is going to protect your project for a long time to come. But if you are using your project indoors, you have the option of using spar urethane or polyacrylic, which is oil-based or water-based, and I really like using the water-based polyacrylic. Another one of my favorites is this high-performance top coat, which I love how it goes on and dries really nice and hard. And my current favorite is the Halcyon, which also is super easy to apply and you can recoat in 1 hour, so you can really get all the 3-4 coats done within 1 day. And all of these are available in matte and satin and gloss finishes, so you can just pick the finish that you're going for. So for this demonstration, I am using the high performance top coat in a satin finish, and as always, we are going to stir the can before we use it. You definitely do not want to shake it because when you shake it, it introduces a lot of bubbles. Now we're going to use a good quality brush and simply brush the finish onto our surface. You want to use light overlapping strokes, and the key is to not overbrush it. As you're applying it, you will feel like it's going on a little bit milky, but don't worry, it will dry nice and clear. The top coat has dried, so next up I'm going to give this a very light sand with 220 grit sandpaper and wipe off all of the dust with a tack cloth and then give it one more coat. And once that coat is dry, you can come back with a 320 grit sandpaper and give it a light sanding, wipe off all the dust once again, and then apply the third top coat. Once this coat dries, it should be nice and smooth, and after the recommended amount of time for it to cure, you can put your project to use. And there, my friend, is everything you need to know to stain wood. It's a lot of information, but in summary, make sure you sand your boards well, use pre-stain conditioner, apply the stain in circular motions and wipe it off in the direction of the grain, and apply your top coat. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you don't have any questions, also let me know how you enjoyed the video and what you would like to see in the future. And here are some projects that you can use your staining skills on.